What's up, guys, and welcome back to MoAn Inc. If you guys are new here, then what's up? My name's Erica. Heya, how you doing? And for today's episode, as you can see from the title, I'm going to be giving you another context video about none other than Apollonius of Rhodes and his Argonautica. You can even see the book right behind me. So the series that will follow this video on this channel will be a breakdown of the Argonautica book by book, chapter by chapter. Keep it fun, keep it fresh, keep it summary, all of that sort of stuff. But before we get into that, I do think it's important to always give you guys context for the author, for the book, historically speaking, mythologically speaking, and that is what today's video will offer. Now, before we can get into that, before I can give you all of those gory details, please do not forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so that you guys never miss an episode in the future. Now, if you guys haven't subscribed yet, I would love for you to join the nerdy family, engage in the comments, chat to me, chat to the other members of the community. It means the world when you guys hit the subscribe button because it tells me that you guys enjoy the content, you guys want to come back for more, and you guys want to see me continue uploading videos here onto YouTube. So it is very, very important. And as you guys are doing that, or since you guys have done that, let's roll into Apollonius. So, Apollonius of Rhodes. The way this episode is going to go is I will start off by telling you about Apollonius himself, and then we'll move into more so the structural notes of the Argonautica itself, right? So we'll start with him, move into his book, because it's just easier if I keep things separate. If you guys are regulars here and you guys have read other books with me, you've read the Iliad with me, the Odyssey, the Aeneid, we also did Aeschylus, you'll know that when I do these context videos, I'm laughing because I'm nervous to tell you guys this yet again. But when I do these context episodes, I always kind of joke that we know nothing about the author. I'm always like, oh no, here are like the 3 fun facts that we know, or like, here's the speculation. And I know that you guys are waiting for the day when I sit in front of this camera and I'm like, here's a full-on biography. Like, I know everything. I can give you the dates and yeah, no, not today. Apollonius is yet another mystery to us all, unfortunately. And going into his story and who he is not as simple as saying, born this date, died this date, wrote this thing, did some other cool things. You guys, we don't know anything really about Apollonius, which is surprising because he's dated to the 3rd century BC, right? So this isn't like Homer, where, nobody was writing anything aside from Homer during that time, so we know nothing about him, them, her, whoever the hell Homer is. Like, we don't even know. But when it comes to Apollonius, we know he's a dude, and we know, like, 3 little things about him that help us date everything else. But when it comes to, like, solidifying him as a being and sort of, constructing him as a person and figuring out how all those puzzle pieces, we can't do it. So, Apollonius of Rhodes, when was he born? Good question, guys. Not 100% certain. As I said, 3rd century BC is when we date him to. So if you say that in any sort of classroom setting, or even like classical setting, you're talking to a bunch of other nerds and you just throw out like, oh, we could look at Apollonius from the 3rd century BC. Like, everyone is going to think that you know exactly what you're talking about. We know who you're talking about. That's about as concrete as we can get. I'm so sorry, I keep touching my hair. It just will not stay. Anywho, when you Google Apollonius, it comes up with him being born around 290 or 295 BC. And the way that date has come into being is really due to a bunch of other dates that we know pretty much for certain from later on in his life, right? So I think that's important for me to highlight when you guys see 290, 295, any sort of time around there. It's because we've worked backwards from other dates. But before we get to those dates, let's sort of just tell you, all of the sort of birthing details of Apollonius. That sounds so weird. So we think Apollonius is probably born sometime around 290, 295-ish BC, and he's not actually born on Rhodes. I know a bunch of you, when you guys see Apollonius of Rhodes, you see that title, you think he was born, bred, published, lived, died in Rhodes, and we know pretty much for certain that he wasn't from Rhodes. Okay, he is a Greek poet, don't get me wrong, but he is from Alexandria in Egypt. I should probably add, some scholars do think he might not have been from Alexandria, but from a little further south, and then he moved up to Alexandria. None of that is certain or necessarily proved, but we know that he lived a good chunk of his life in Alexandria. When it comes to his education, there are lots of rumors that he had this like literary, sort of argumentative relationship. Like, he had beef, basically, okay? He had, like, massive beef with this guy called Callimachus, okay? This is his name up on the screen if you guys want to see how it's spelt, because I have no doubt I butchered that. But so, apparently he had all this beef, growing up, and when he sort of hit the writing scene with this guy, do just want to say, a lot of scholars just think that that's made up, just to make his story a little bit more interesting. It is something that we see with other writers and other literary, big people, whether it be philosophical people or later on in Rome, we have lots of authors who necessarily didn't like each other. So people think they're just kind of throwing that into Apollonius of Rhodes' story as well. But yeah, we don't know that. He could have argued with him. I have no idea. I wasn't there. But like, this is just what scholars have said. It probably isn't true. If you've heard that though, it is a rumor that is circulating. But where he got educated or how he necessarily got educated is not known to us. Of course. What is known to us is that when he was in Alexandria, he was made the chief librarian at the library, which I know sounds boring to a modern audience, but believe me, okay, this is a big deal. This is not like some little library off, the side of the city where it's like, oh, if you're a spinster and you can't get married and you're unlovable and you go and work, like how Hollywood made librarians seem. Like, if you guys even think of like A Wonderful Life, when James Stewart, this is like my favorite thing, when James Stewart goes back to go and see his life as if like he wasn't around, right? So like what life would have been like if he wasn't there. But his wife, who's like 24, they describe her as being like this unmarried spinster who works in the library at 24 years old. Basically, the reason why I'm mentioning that is because this is not the case, okay? The library at Alexandria was a huge deal. You worked there only if you were top dog, okay? And we can date when Apollonius was the chief librarian there because we do have a piece of papyrus which has all of the chief librarians in order on it. Now, this, unfortunately, is contested with a bunch of other sources, as everything is. So on this list, we have Apollonius being sort of sandwiched in between these two other librarians that I wrote down their names because I would never remember them. This guy called Zenodotus came before Apollonius. So it's Zenodotus, and then it's Apollonius, and then right underneath him is this guy, Eratosthenes. Again, I probably butchered that, but that's who he's sandwiched in between. Unfortunately, in other source material, people have said that he actually came after Eratosthenes. Whatever. Either way, he either came before or after that guy. We're going to trust the piece of papyrus because that's how we end up dating his birthday. Remember how I mentioned that, right? So this is how we do that because if we look at that time period in between those two people, it meant that Apollonius would have had to be working at the library from around 260 BC through to 247 BC, okay? Now, that is then working back from that, how old he would have had to be to do that, what sort of education he would have had to undergo, blah, 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 has sort of forced us back to 290, 295 for his birthday, right? So that's how all of this is connected. Now, at some point in this period, it's unknown when, but at some point, he sits down and he writes the Argonautica. Now, this is not the only thing he's ever written, just to make that very certain. He actually wrote a number of different things. He wrote philological monographs. I had to write down that phrasing because I wasn't going to remember that. He also wrote a bunch of epigrams. He wrote poems about different cities. There was a lot of work in his portfolio. We just have the one. So we don't know when this one was written, but it was written sometime when he was in Alexandria, right? We're getting to Rhodes in a second. I know that you guys are still watching this going, where the fuck is Rhodes? It's coming. But at the moment, we're still in Alexandria. He writes the Argonautica. Some point in his life, he stands up and he presents it. Okay, so in the ancient world, what you would have done is you would have written something and writing was all done to be read aloud. Okay, so people weren't reading it, people were hearing it. So when Apollonius writes the Argonautica, he gets up in Alexandria and he speaks the Argonautica to people. He tells them his epic poem, right? It's written in Greek. So he does this, incredible performance, whatever it is, in front of this whole crowd of people, and it bombs. Okay, it does not go well. In fact, we hear that it went so poorly that Apollonius left. This is where Rhodes comes into it, because he leaves to go to Rhodes to rewrite everything. Okay, that seems to be the common consensus, is that he leaves, goes to Rhodes, and does the rewriting there. Why necessarily is not told. Like, there is a rumor that possibly his mother was from Rhodes, which explains why he might have gone to Rhodes, because he had that family link. We don't know. But he ends up on Rhodes, and he does all of his reworking because the people of Alexandria hated his work, thought he was terrible, and he was like, let me show them. So Apollonius rewrites the Argonautica, and he presents it on Rhodes to another room full of people, right? He does a whole other reading, does a recital, but this time it goes down a storm. Okay, people love it. They love his story of Jason. They love his Medea. They love the story he tells, the adventure, the heroism, all of this. It goes so well that ends up being the Argonautica that we read today. Now, after this reading on Rhodes, again, we don't know the dates, we don't know why he went or any of this sort of stuff. There are rumors that he stayed on Rhodes because it went so well. He didn't want to leave. He was like, fuck everyone in Alexandria. People like me here. So some people think he died on Rhodes. In fact, if you Google this, you know, that tends to be what people say. It's that he definitely died on Rhodes, happily ever after. No. Of course, it's not an easy no. It never is. So there is some scholarly debate about possibly after the episode on Rhodes that actually he went back to Alexandria and he could have possibly, shown back up in his hometown. It would make sense. That's technically where he's from, as opposed to being from Rhodes. But we don't know that for certain. So just that you guys know, most people say he died on Rhodes. He's not from Rhodes, but he might have died there. But he also, there's a very slim chance he might have gone back to Alexandria. So if you hear that, people are not wrong when they say that, but you're not right technically when you say either of those things. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that is all the information that we have of Apollonius of Rhodes, right? All of that murky, wonderful stuff of like, oh, I don't know this for certain. Like, that's everything. Okay, we know nothing else for certain. We know nothing about him, family, kids, no idea. Meaning that I can now nicely wrap up this part of the episode and give you a little bit more information about the Argonautica, the structural, the history, and all of that sort of stuff. So let's get into that, because obviously since we have the book, there's a lot more concrete stuff we can talk about with this. Quick one. You guys are always asking me in the comments the best way to support MoAn Inc. after you subscribe, right? Even if you guys are newbies, I know that you guys are part of the community now, and I'm always getting asked, how can you support even more? What can I do to help Erica continue making this content, not only for students, but for anybody else that wants free classics education? Well, the best way that you guys can actually help support me is by donating to the channel. Right? All of your donations go towards getting better equipment. They go towards buying more books so that I can offer more content for you guys in different realms and on different things. And obviously, the more books that I read, the more experts I can invite on and so forth. So if you would like to donate to the channel, you guys can find the link in the description below, which is ko-fi.com/MoAn Inc, which is MoAninc. So one more time, it's www.ko-fi.com/MoAn Inc. Any and all donations are appreciated, and they are used directly to fund this channel, to fund the material, and to fund the equipment. So thank you guys so much for listening, and back to the episode. So, the Argonautica. The Argonautica is split up into 4 chapters, okay? In sort of the ancient history, classical world, we call those books, okay? So book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4. 4 chapters. We're going to be going into depth in each and every one of these chapters as the series progresses. But I do just want to let you guys know that this is really deceivingly small, okay? My books are going to fall, but I do want to show you guys, it's only this thin, okay? So this is 4 chapters. It's very thin. The reason why I say it's deceptively thin is because it is dense. And I don't mean that in a bad way, right? It's not a hard read. It's a very easy read. It's just that because it's done in such a short amount of time, there is a lot of information and a lot of story put into such a small, deceptively tiny, short book. So the book obviously was in ancient Greek and it was an epic poem. So the ancient Greek is sort of used to kind of mimic Homer a little bit, but it is his own style, but we're mimicking that sort of kind of poetry, right? So it is an epic poem in the same way that the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Aeneid, the Aeneid is also one, by Virgil that is used to sort of replicate Homer. That's sort of the same thing with the Argonautica, okay? So it is an epic story. It's an epic poem. It is this story, this incredible adventure story of our title character, Jason, because even though it's not printed the Argonautica on the front of it, it is printed Jason and the Golden Fleece. So our title character, Jason, is from this small place in Greece called Colchis, and he is sent by his uncle all the way to Colchis, which is way further than any of them had gone at that time, and that's stressed in the book, right? That during the mythological time period this is stressed, set even, people have tried to go to Colchis and they have failed, or they've gone all the way there and they've been killed and they haven't returned, right? So no one's done a journey to and from Colchis. So when Jason's uncle tells Jason, like, hey, you've got to go and get this golden fleece and bring it back, and it's all the way in Colchis, this is a very, very big deal, okay, for Jason and for the other heroes. Jason, who's this young guy that has never done anything heroic in his life, okay? This is why we need to remember that Jason is the hero of the story. I know that you guys have probably read Euripides and you're like, I hate Jason. This is before Euripides, okay? So we need to judge him prior to Euripides' days of just what's on these pages, because he's this young guy who's never done anything heroic. He's never had to, venture further than where he lives, or at least the known area around there. So he's now being sent on this giant boat with all of these giant heroes to go and get this thing and bring it back for his uncle. When I say these giant heroes, this boat is filled with so many people that you guys will know. So the most famous of them is Heracles. I have no doubt at least you've seen Disney Hercules, right? So that guy, in amongst all of his 12 labors in mythology, he gets on the Argo and he goes with Jason to go and fetch the Golden Fleece. But not only him, we also have the fathers of many really famous characters from the Iliad. So Achilles' dad, Peleus, is there. Ajax squared, so both Ajax, little and big Ajax, both of their dads are also on this boat. And then we have even the brothers of Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world, right? Her two brothers, Castor and Polydeuces, get on the boat and they go with Jason. And everybody else on the boat, if they're not incredibly famous themselves, they are the child of a god. I'm not even making that up. There are so many children of Hermes. It's kind of insane. So if they're not super famous to you on the offset, because they are incredibly famous, their parents are gods. So this is literally like the Avengers. I said that the Avengers was like the Iliad, and I guess it is in regards to more so a pop culture reference, but I mean, even in the ancient world, this was like the first. So this is like the first Avengers film, okay? And then you've got the Iliad, which is like Endgame, okay? So you've got all these huge heroes get on this boat, and they're being led by this kid, Jason. And that is the story, is really Jason, not only are they going on this crazy journey to go and do this physical task, but it's also Jason becoming the man that he has to be, unfortunately, that we meet in Euripides. But it's Jason growing up, and he's learning how to lead. He's learning how to figure this out on this journey to and from Colchis. Now, you might be wondering why it's called the Argonautica. Where does that come into it? Well, the boat itself is actually called the Argo. So it's named after the guy who built the boat. I always think this is important to highlight. The guy who built the boat is a guy called Argos. And then they named the boat the Argo. And so then all the people who sail on the Argo are called the Argonauts. Just in case you happen to be wondering that, or maybe you just saw the CFL team, the Toronto Argonauts. I have to say that as somebody who is half Canadian, that was actually one of the first times I ever saw it in a pop culture reference. So in case you happen to be at like a CFL game and see that and you're like, where does that come from? This is it. You're welcome. And obviously on this big journey, it's not just the heroes. We also have godly intervention. And of course, when Jason gets to Colchis, we meet the incredible Medea, because she is the daughter of the king there. The king there is this guy called Aeetes, who is the son of Helios, the Titan sun god in ancient Greece. His sister is Circe. His other sister is Pasiphae. It's a really fucked up family, but we're not going to get into that today. Medea is his daughter, and when Jason and all of his Argonauts, they get on the boat, they sail the way to Colchis, they don't only leave with the Golden Fleece, they also leave with Medea and bring her back to Greece. So that's the story, okay? It is literally point A to point B and then back to point A. And the book really ends with them actually one stop away from getting back to Iolcus from Colchis, so that you know that they make it safely home. But it's about the journey, right? It's very much like the Odyssey in that sense, where it has a little bit of romance with regards to Medea and Jason. This is before he fucks it up. Okay, I always want to keep highlighting that. This is way before that happens. So there is a little bit of romance there, but it is mostly this journey. Okay, it's mostly very much like the Odyssey. If you enjoyed the Odyssey, you'll like this. There are lots of crazy stops. And in fact, when you try and follow the story of Jason and where the boat goes, it's quite hard to follow if you're not familiar with the landscape. Okay, if you're familiar with ancient Greece, that's fantastic. But the majority of this journey, actually, and most of the stops take place sort of from the edge of Turkey and through into the Black Sea, right? Because that's where Colchis is. So if you're one of those people that just heard that and you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do, Erica? Like, I don't know what any of these places are. Can I still read this and enjoy it? Of course you can, okay? You don't need to know the basic layout of what this part of the world looks like. But if you would like to, Tyler Miles Lockett just launched his map of Jason's journey on the Argo, because they go from Iolcus one way, and then when they go back to Iolcus from Colchis, they go a different way, right? So that is also important to highlight. And Tyler did the most incredible map of this journey so that you guys can follow each and every stop, figure out where he is at what point, how he gets there, how he gets back. All of that is laid out incredibly on this map. So you guys can see it on the screen if you guys are watching. However, if you guys also want to order your own copy, you can check out the link in the description below, because I'll link you guys to his shop, because it is just gorgeous. And I would highly recommend, getting your own little or big print of this so that you guys can follow along as we read each and every week, because this story is wacko. It is an absolute wackadoodle of a story. I am so excited to be getting into this with you guys. But before we dive into books 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I take you guys on this journey from Greece through to the Black Sea and all the way back, I would highly advise that you actually go and watch my next video, which is going to be a general Greek mythology episode explaining what exactly the Golden Fleece was and why it's so important that Jason goes and picks it up. Why is it so important to Aeetes to keep, and what is the mythological significance of this Golden Fleece? So definitely go and check that video out next, and I'll be seeing you right over there, still here on MoAn Inc. So I'll see you guys then.